KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
Watergate! Watergate!
Jim Schutze here with Get Off My Lawn, the weekly KNON radio version of a column that I write on weekdays for the Dallas Observer webpage. Great to have you back, and be sure to call me up to tell me what you think of me at 972-647-1893. It's 972-647-1893. I'm sure it'll all be nice and positive. I can't imagine anything else. I want to talk about schools today, which is something we've been talking about here on the radio show for the last few weeks. But before I get to that, I have a religious message that I wanted to share with you, and I'm interested what you will think of it. This comes from this week's City Council meeting, in which Councilmember Von Seal Jones Hill compared another council member, Angela Hunt. This is in a debate over fracking, gas drilling on city-owned land. They're talking about gas drilling. And there was a difference of opinion between Councilmember Hill and Councilmember Hunt. And Councilmember Hill said that she found Hunt to be similar or parallel to Haman in the book of Esther in the Bible. Haman was the Jew killer and a symbol of all evil in the book of Esther. Von Seal Hill compared Angela Hunt to Haman, and then she compared City Manager Mary Soom to Jesus Christ. And she said that, quote, well, she was talking about criticism of City Manager Soom, and she felt that this was parallel to the crucifixion of Jesus. And she said, quote, Miss Soom, this is a Good Friday moment, but I guarantee you from the faith well into which I reach, your Easter is coming, and you will sail forth. That was a prediction that the city manager would be resurrected, and that this would be tantamount to Easter, when we Christians celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So, you can tell from my tone, I found the speech, I don't know what adjective to use. Appalling, that doesn't quite get it. Sort of crazy. And I'm curious how you feel about it, and we can go into the setup for it, the background, which was that 5 years ago, the whole City Council and the Plan Commission, all of our elected representatives told the city manager that they wanted her to go out and do these deals with gas drilling companies to get some money for the city. 5 years ago, the city was in serious money trouble. They needed money. So they said, go get these deals, but they said, when you're doing them, you can't have any drilling on parkland. No parkland. Parkland's, it's a legal designation for land. It doesn't always mean that you're going to see swing sets and picnic tables there. There's just some land that is legally parkland. And they all said to the city manager, don't have any drilling on parkland. And she said, on multiple occasions, okay, of course not. No drilling on parkland. So about a month ago, City Council member Hunt and City Council member Scott Griggs, Hunt from East Dallas, Scott Griggs from North Oak Cliff, discovered that as even 5 years ago when Soom was telling the council, oh, absolutely no drilling on parkland, I won't allow that, she signed a deal with this drilling company in which she promised to get them the right to drill on parkland. And she took a check for $19 million from them for the city, not for herself personally. The city needed the money, and she took it. And they weren't going to they weren't going to write that check until they got her promise that she would get them the ability to drill on parkland. So anyway, a month ago, Hunt and Soom discovered this deal, which the city managers, you can well understand, had gone to great lengths to conceal, to hide from the public, to hide from the council. And they got their hands on it finally, and they publicized it. They gave a copy of it to me, for example, and I put it in the Dallas Observer. And there was a huge blow-up over it because, of course, it meant that the city manager had directly defied her bosses, the elected leadership of the city. And so this last week there was a hearing on all of that to discuss that. And it was pretty amazing. I mean, what happened was that the rest of the city council just came absolutely to Soom's defense and slapped the spit out of the mouths of Hunt and Griggs, and told them they were terrible. And the height of it was this speech by Von Sale Hill, in which she compared Hunt to Haman, the Jew killer, and then went on to compare Mary Soom to Jesus Christ, and to predict that Mary Soom would be resurrected and have her own Easter. I don't know. I said in the Observer, I hope that if that happened, we could combine the two holidays or events, observations, just for the sake of efficiency, so that Christians everywhere would be able to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ and the resurrection of Mary Soom on the same day. And we'll see if that works out. Anyway, call me up at 972-647-1893 if you have feelings about this. By the way, I mean, as far as the gas drilling deal goes, I've written Hunt and Griggs, I think, are not very happy with me because I've written that, what Soom did was terrible. It was deceptive and dishonest. And even though I like Soom and respect her personally, I thought she probably should be canned for it. But I've also written that I think they got to do that. I think they got to let the gas company drill on the parkland that they got the right to drill to, because they also signed a lease in which they said they could drill on it, and they took this $19 million from them. They don't want to give it back. It's not as simple a question as giving it back. This is 5 years down the road. The gas companies invested all kinds of additional money and time and energy on the assumption that they're going to be able to drill on this land. All the city had to do, if they didn't want to let them drill on the land, or they weren't, if they weren't sure about it, just hang on to the check, so you could give it back if you can't come across with the drilling rights. Anyway, I think they probably, a deal's a deal. They took the money, they spent the money, they probably have to let them drill. And soon probably should be fired, which is not going to happen because the council absolutely defends her. We got Joe on line 4. Joe, how are you this morning?
Hey, Dean, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, good. That's really juicy you're working on there, and you're exactly right. Soon should be dealt with for misleading the city and violating policy and promises that she had made that she wouldn't allow drilling on that land, and perjury, lying about it, and trying to keep it concealed. But maybe Von Seer has her mixed up with the Pope and this Easter thing and getting our own holiday and resurrection, you know, all of a sudden, with looming allegations of child molestation and lawsuits and gay marriages and taking a pill, the Pope is tired. He can't carry the weight. He looked in the mirror and discovered he's an old, frail man. His body won't take it, so he's going to ride into the sunset. They're getting her mixed up with the Pope.
Yeah, I agree. Joe. I this is a tough time for Roman Catholics, and I don't even feel up to getting into it because I think that you know, I'm what I would call an ethnic Protestant, and Protestants aren't doing so great either on a lot of these scores. It's just a tough time, and I also don't. You know, I don't know a lot about the Pope's retirement. I'm a local guy. I'm more focused on local things. And Joe, I'm gonna let you go for a second because we got Lexi on line 1. Lexi, how are you? Are you still there, Lexi?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Lexi Davis. I want to know if the city going to get them their money back plus interest and penalties and all that kind of stuff.
I think, Lexi, it's more even than interest and penalties because the company invested a bunch of other money on other sites on the assumption they. Lexi, it sounds to me like you're underwater. I'm gonna have to let you go, but I'll try to answer your question. Lexi was calling us there from the bottom of White Rock Lake, I think, and he was asking if the city was going to give the company back, this drilling company back, all their money and interest and so on. There's an argument that I get from people at City Hall that, oh, well, that drilling company, they're big boys, and they didn't have a guarantee, and to heck with them. They rolled the dice on that $19 million, and so they don't get to cash, so they lose. So what? Tough. I don't know about that. I really don't know about that because there's, you know, it just strikes most people as such a bald deception. The fact is that Sum is our CEO. And she works for us, and that's our name on the building down there, Dallas. That's you and me. We're ultimately responsible for her being there, and she took these people's money and told them they could drill, and I think it's a bad deal. She shouldn't have done it, and there should be a price paid, but I just don't know going forward what the wisdom is of the city getting a name for just being a sort of a scam operation. That's what it looks like. It looks like a scam. You take their money and you tell them, oh, I had my fingers crossed. And $19 million is, I think of that as fairly serious money, real serious money. And this is not a huge company. They lose this deal. Their representatives are telling me, who knows, you know, people make all kinds of claims, but they're telling me that they lose this deal and they're out of business. They lost everything. They're skunked. They don't have jobs anymore. They're walking around with a great big X across them in terms of their future as a business enterprise. I just don't know that we're justified in doing that. I think we ran our own house poorly. We don't control our CEO. We've done a bad job. And if you ever wanted to see evidence of it, it was in that City Council meeting this week. The other thing that Von Seal Hill said that was instructive, and other people have said it, she said, look, everybody knows that we tell the city manager to just go get money somehow and don't tell us too much about how you did it. That's because they want money, but they also want to have credit for never raising taxes. And they don't want to cut anything. You know, they don't want to slash anything. for fear of goring somebody's ox. So they want free money. They want money that they don't pay a price for, that they're not responsible for. And that's where they put the city manager in that crack, in that vice. And they say, look, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to do that. We also want to tell the voters that we're not raising taxes because we're so fiscally responsible. We're not fiscally responsible. We want to spend a bunch more money. But we want you to go hunt up the money somehow so we can look good. And that's what this gas drilling thing was all about. And Von Hill did sort of say that. I'm looking for the quote. She said, quote, "It is not uncommon for the City Council to say to the staff to be creative and expeditious in finding ways to pay for the things that the council wants to pay for." Creative and expeditious. I said in my column this week, think of this as like a family. They're broke, but they want to go to Disney World and they want to stay in a really nice hotel. And so they have this 20-something son in the family, big kid, and so they drive him down to the bank and they hand him a pistol and they say, man, if somebody could just be creative and expeditious and come up with the money for us to go to Disneyland, that person would be a hero to this family. Look at that bank over there. It's full of money, isn't it? So that's what they're saying with the city manager. And when they rushed to her defense Wednesday, it wasn't so much. That was like them saying later, "How dare you accuse our son of robbing a bank?" Their real motivation is that they don't want the city manager to feel too squeezed. They definitely don't want her to feel abandoned, because they don't want her, let's say, getting fired, getting sacked, having to quit, and then blah, 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 talking a whole lot about why this really happened. They have a vested interest in keeping the city manager happy, because they, as Hill said, they use the city manager to go get money for them in squirrely ways. We'll come back to this after the break. Jim Schutze, Get Off My Lawn. See you in a minute.
Knon thanks you for your pledge to the recent pledge drive. Now's the time to make your pledge count. Send your pledge to Knon, P.O. Box 710909, Dallas, Texas 75371. If you missed our pledge drive, you can still support community radio by pledging on the web at knon.org. Your pledge only counts if you pay it. Knon, Box 710909, Dallas, Texas 75371. Be sure to put the name of the show that you're supporting on your check, money order, or envelope. Questions about Knon Pledge Drive? Call 214-828-9500, extension 234.
This is Sonny Boy Mark, and I'd like to take a minute here to tell you about over 60 minutes of great blues listening available now on KNON's Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 Blues CD. This is some great stuff, folks. 15 tracks from the Two Tones, Blues Boy Bo, Buddy Whittington, Andrea Dawson, Kirkland James, Sonny Colley, Johnny Red and the Roosters, the Chris Watson Band, the Rough Cut Blues Band, Jeff Stone with Charlie Love, David Millsap, Sir Loin and the Ass Kicking Machine, Michael J. and the Paul Bird Band, and JJ and the Detonators. The 1,000 copies we made are selling fast, and we won't reissue it. Get yours now at Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, Record Town in Fort Worth, and in Dallas at Bill's Records and Rewind Music. The CD is available as a download at cdbaby.com. All proceeds benefit KNON, sponsored by Forever Young Records. Vinyl copies available at Forever Young Records only. For more info on Texas Blues Radio, Radio Volume 5. Visit knon.org. Your ears been bending for some blues? Well, feed them the real thing with Texas Blues Radio Volume 5.
Jim Schutze, back with Get Off My Lawn. And we've been talking about the deal last week with the City Council and gas drilling and their big battle over all of that and the city manager. I want to change it up a little and talk in this segment about schools, which is something we've been discussing here on Get Off My Lawn on KNON in recent weeks. Call me up. Tell me what you think. I'm at 972-647-1893, 972-647-1893. You know, we have this new superintendent of schools, Mike Miles. He's been here since, I think, last July. He came from Colorado from a smaller school district. Interesting guy. I haven't gotten to know him personally, but he obviously a smart man. Before education, he had a background in the military and in the diplomatic corps, and was a superintendent of a sort of middle-class suburban school district in Colorado, but they had a lot of poor kids too, and was brought here very much as a reform superintendent. And why do we need a reform superintendent in Dallas? Well, come on. I don't know that we even have to talk about that. If we wanted to, I suppose we could start comparing the Dallas school system to parallel school systems, big urban public school systems around the country. That's fair, that's instructive, but we also just have what we have. It is what it is. And we have an enormous failure on the ground that has been a failure for decades. What do we mean failure? Well, we mean that it dumps out tens of thousands of kids into the world, into the economy, who cannot read or write or do arithmetic. And we've seen startling statistics in recent months, what's sometimes called the kindergarten to prison pipeline. Other people call it the cradle to prison pipeline. What happens to kids who are dumped out into the economy, unable to read or write? A lot of them wind up going to prison, get in trouble, go to prison. Now they are, after that happens, then they are illiterate felons, which is a life sentence. There are people who will say that's not the school's fault. And I've gotten this in recent weeks at the Observer, in the comments in the blog. People will say, well, that's the fault of poverty. That's the fault of culture. That's the fault of history. Okay, so we've named all this huge stuff that we can't do anything about, and that's always been there. So what are we saying? So when you follow that logic, where people will say, well, if we want to cure this, we need to cure poverty. When did that ever happen? So what we're saying is that dumping tens of thousands. Look, every year, thousands of wonderful, marvelous, beautiful little babies are born to us, full of potential and promise. And we're saying we've got a system that is like somebody walking through that maternity ward with a rubber stamp and stamping prison on the heads of X numbers of those babies. And when you start to drill down on ethnicity, you find that those rubber stamps are going in particular on the heads of poor black kids and especially poor black boys, Hispanic kids too. But we see that we have this system where these babies are disproportionately destined for lives of misery in a way that seems to be especially consonant with their color and where they are born. The nowadays, we're in the post-Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, well, maybe, era. And so the discrepancy is no longer between black kids and white kids. The discrepancy is just as great between black kids in poor southern Dallas neighborhoods and black kids in more affluent suburban neighborhoods where lots and lots of upwardly mobile black families have moved. The jury's in, the data is in, the proof is in. If you remove the barriers from African American citizens and families, if you open the gate, they rush through and can be and are enormously successful, and their kids are out in those suburban schools and private schools doing just as well as any other kind of kids. The gap, the discrepancy is between kids in DISD, in the urban school system, and kids everywhere else, kids out in the suburbs. And so there are more and more people, they tend to be younger than me, which is easy to do, but I'm talking people 30s, 40s, early 50s who are looking at this fact on the ground, this terrible, you can even describe it as a kind of Holocaust, that these children are born to this terrible destiny, and they're looking at it and saying, well, we can't accept that. That can't go on. The other factor is this: it doesn't have to go on. The other thing we know now, because of the huge compilation of data in public education around the country, the studies of the so-called anomalous schools, which are schools with really, really poor kids from tough backgrounds that are being taught up to and beyond the level of rich white kids. So we know it can be done, and it doesn't really cost any new money. Excuse me. So we know it can be done, and you have people who are saying, if we know it can be done, and it's not done, then that's a terrible sin. Why would we accept that? Why would we let that go on? And what is, if we want to change it, what is our door? What is our pathway into that problem? And the logical one seems to be the public school system. So there is focus on the schools as a tool of social justice and morality. And that's really what this Mike Miles deal represents. It represents an enormous moral, political, philosophical energy focused on the schools with a determination to turn them around. All of this is about to start hitting the wall. Because how do you turn it around? And here's where things get really, really tough. For 50 years, the public school system in Dallas has been the city's principal engine of political patronage. And you have people who are inside the school system, who've run it for 50 years, and they are like second and third generation of the same families sometimes. There's enormous nepotism. Mainly you just have the same folks running schools over this long period of time. So what the reformers are saying is, if you've been running a school that fails to teach the kids how to read and write in 12 years and dumps them out and with just like a hall pass straight to prison, then you're out. You've had your chance, and it's not working. What you're doing is awful. You're not getting it done. And don't tell us that poverty is at fault. That's there's nothing we can do about that. When you say poverty is at fault, you're saying we accept this situation. There's nothing we can do about it. Just tell, what the reformers are saying is, this just has to change one way or the other, and part of changing it is going to be a major changeover in the personnel. Call me up at, by the way, if you know about this, if you have opinions about it, I'm at 972-647-1893, 972-647-1893. I think it's really hard to argue with the fact that there's got to be huge change in the school system. But the argument is coming, and the accusation is that these are a bunch of outsiders and meddlers and people who have no standing on the issue. Let me pause. I got Michael on line 2. Michael, what's up this morning?
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Well, I ain't gonna say the school. Well, the schools do have part to blame, but how can you make somebody do anything? You can't make those kids learn.
But
it's some kids that could care less about learning. You can't make them learn.
But Michael, let me observe one thing. When this whole school reform deal started, the people said, okay, what works? And they found that there were these so-called anomalous schools where they were doing a heck of a job of teaching the kids. And they said, let's go see what happens there. Let's see. And some of the schools were in Dallas, a couple. Some were down on the Mexican border. They looked around and they found that these schools do work. They do. They are able.
Some of those schools probably got parents that care about learning. My parents got to the 6th and 7th grade, but my whole life they pushed education with 5th and 6th grade education.
But these schools are teaching kids with crack mothers. These schools are teaching kids from
heroin mothers, meth mothers, all mothers.
Yeah, these schools are teaching kids from terrible family backgrounds, but they do it anyway. They have a combination of things. They have to have a really strong principal. They have tough discipline to get the kids to pay attention, but they get the kids to buy into it by believing in the school. You can't just do it by wailing on the kids. You know, the kids have to want to succeed, and they do it with a lot of 3 R's. Way back, basic, memorizing the stuff to catch up.
Well, one last thing, I ain't buying that old poverty crap because, they claim that if the kids went to school hungry in the morning, they couldn't learn. So they start feeding them breakfast, they still flunk it. Then they come up with, well, if they all wore the same kind of clothes, so they got uniforms now, and they still flunk it. So I ain't buying that old bull crap.
No, Michael, I think you and I are on the same page that if the kid is motivated to learn, that kid will learn.
Poverty should motivate you to do better and get out of poverty.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, absolutely. Poverty is a symptom, not a cause. If when you say it's a cause, what's the flip side of that? If you're saying, well, kids can't read because they're poor, so does that mean that being rich makes people smarter? I haven't seen much evidence of that. Have you?
Now all them smart people in Congress that rich, and look how screwed up our economy is.
Yeah.
So I don't buy that.
No, it has to do with something else that's inside people, but every baby born is capable of having that inside, and you have to find a way to get to it. And I'm not saying that these people who want to come in and reform the Dallas schools are a bunch of geniuses, or that I even know that they're right. They're just, and they may screw up too, but they're saying we have to do something. We can't let it sit there this way.
Well, a lot of years of failure, so I guess we can try this. We done tried everything else.
Yeah.
So I'll get off and keep listening.
All right. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate your calling, and if you have feelings about this as well, call me up at 972-647-1893. Excuse me, 972-647-1893. The one thing that I just look, here's what I think we have to be suspicious of, and I see it in the comments that I get on stuff I write online for the Dallas Observer. you get this instant blowback against Miles and against all the people around him. And I can tell this stuff's coming from inside DISD. And they say, oh, Miles, he had a bunch of scandals when he came. He's like all these other superintendents, like Yvonne Gonzalez back in the day. And so, one thing about Dallas, we can dredge up every scandal back into biblical times. And so people write and they say all this stuff about how he paid people too much money and so on. And look, that's coming from the people who have the good jobs in DISD. They've all got a story about how nothing should change, and anybody who wants to change it is a crook, and so on. And don't listen to that, that man over there behind the curtain. That's coming from the people who've got these jobs. I'm not telling you I think these are terrible people, but look at the children. Just look at the kids. Look at the young adults. I don't know. I've spent in the last 30 years a lot of time covering stories in Southern Dallas. I don't know how many times I found myself talking to a young adult, 30, 40 years old, who ought to be a lawyer, ought to be a doctor, ought to be a painter, ought to be a poet. Instead, he's sitting on a picnic table drinking ponies, smoking weed, because he can't get a job because he's been to prison. That's an enormous waste of human potential, and it's a sin. And we have to find a way to turn that around. And that's what people are talking about with this whole thing of school reform. I don't believe that you can argue with their motives. And the attempts to argue with their motives are all pretty transparently attempts by people to protect their own jobs. And I think if you pay close attention to it, you'll see that. I'll give you an example. I may have to wait until after the break. I'll give you an example that has to do with what Miles is trying to do with feeder patterns. We're going to go to the break. Hang on. We got a caller, a DISD teacher. I hope you'll wait through the break, and we'll see you in a minute.
My grandfather, he loved the boogie. His father, he loved it too. My daddy loved the boogie.
Big Bill Morganfield is coming back.
That's the son of the blues legend Muddy Waters coming to Dallas for one night only in a big Knon Blues benefit event, Saturday, March 9th at Poor David's Pub.
Big Bill will be playing his father's guitars during this rare Dallas appearance.
Get there early. We'll have free barbecue from the Alligator Cafe.
Joining Big Bill will be the Super Kings and Susie Q in the Shaft, featuring James Hinkle.
Join us for this very special blues event.
Tickets are available now at knon.org, Bill's Records, and Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie.
Saturday, March the 9th, Big Bill Morganfield with the Super Kings and Susie Q and the Shaft, featuring James Hinkle, and a free barbecue dinner from the Alligator Cafe at Poor David's Pub.
Poor David's Pub is located at 1313 South Lamar in Dallas.
We'll see you there. This is a Knon benefit event.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
This is William, your videographer for the KNON talk shows. You can watch Get Off My Lawn by going to the knon.org website. Click on schedules to the left side of your screen. Choose Get Off My Lawn's page. Scroll to the bottom of that page, then choose your favorite show to watch or download. This show will be ready for viewing by lunchtime Tuesday. Have a great day.
Hey, babes, take one.
Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. We have a caller who's been hanging faithfully through the break to talk about DISD. Are you still there, caller?
I am.
And you're a teacher?
I am a teacher in DISD, and I have a lot of interesting thoughts about the topic.
Okay.
And I will tell you, I have been a certified teacher for 39 years.
Wow.
And this is my first year in DISD.
Ah.
And but this isn't really about DISD, but we so have the issues that I want to talk about in DISD. First of all, I want to recommend that everybody, whether you're a teacher or not, read a really terrific book that I read before I was in DISD called Understanding Poverty. Mm-hmm. And it's by Ruby Payne, and every educator knows about it. It's short, and it's written for teachers and even the layperson to understand how poverty affects our schools and our kids. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of things. One is generational poverty, which is what a lot of our poorest DISD students come from, and the other is situational, where somebody is temporarily out of work, somebody, it's not a long-term thing. In the generational poverty, and I got to tell you, my school is one of the worst performing schools in DISD.
Great.
I work with a fabulous faculty, a wonderful principal and assistant principal. They're really terrific, and they're really having to train me because though I have tremendous experience as a teacher, I do not have experience with the toughest behavior problems that we have.
Yes.
And our kids test poorly. My school is about half Hispanic and about half African American.
Okay.
And we have a few whites sprinkled in there.
Right.
And one of the things that I have noticed is my Hispanic kids have bilingual training and very good social skills. They come from families, for the most part, that are together, intact.
Yeah.
My African American children come from what I would not really call families. They're very dispersed. Many children living in a home with, there's multiple parents of different children, different. And, so we all know this. So
bouncing
here's
around.
what I've noticed. Right, bouncing around, and the kids, but I'm going to tell you, I'm in an elementary, and in the kids' mind, the lights are on. The kids are alert, they're smart, the lights are on, but it is so buried under all of the social problems that they have.
Yes.
And a lot of this, we can't really get to. Our kids come to school for breakfast. Mm-hmm. We have great teachers. They stay with us for lunch, great teaching in the afternoon. Many stay for our after-school program. Again, federally funded snacks, federally funded tutoring. The only thing that we could do is give them dinner and keep them overnight. They're darling, they're sweethearts, and we have so many fights that break out and so much difficulty with behavior.
How many of them? How many of them do you think are arriving at the end of third grade on grade level, literate, reading and doing arithmetic?
I'm going to tell you, I'm a specials teacher, so I don't know exactly how many. I know we're poorly performing, but here's my idea, and I talked to my principal about it. There are very few children in my school that speak correct English.
Right.
Whether they speak Ibonically or whether they speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Of course, my African American children, the only language they know is their so-called English.
Yeah.
And they do not speak properly. And so when it comes to testing, they don't read it. They read it the way somebody. It's a foreign language to them, is what I'm saying.
Right.
They're not. They're taught to read. But I believe, and this is just me, there's a disconnect between the language that they think in and that they speak in and the language that they are reading. And I feel that they are extremely hampered by this. Because teachers, I don't...
Let me run something by you, and I'm curious in what your reaction is. In the study of the so-called anomalous schools, where they're taking these very same kind of kids and getting them fully up to grade level, fully literate and numerate at the end of third grade. One of the things they have from the first instant that the kids enter the school is really tough discipline and a lot of rote learning. And a friend of mine toured one of these schools, who was like an old white liberal like me, and said to the said to the principal, I'm picking up something in the background.
I'm terribly sorry.
That's okay. Anyway, said.
I'm so sorry.
Said to the principal, I really admire what you're doing here. It's great. It's wonderful that you can accomplish this. But I can't stand the discipline, the military martial atmosphere. I just don't like it as a way to treat children. The principal's response was, I completely understand what you're saying. Believe me, I come from a background where I was more skeptical about this kind of discipline than you do. But my kids cannot afford your sympathy. My kids have to get this stuff down by the end of 3rd grade, and I can't get it down them unless they are concentrating, and I can't get them to concentrate without tough discipline. How does that sound to you?
I'm going to tell you something. I never had to be like a Gestapo in all of my other teaching.
Yeah.
And what that person told you is correct. And it doesn't mean that we're mean, but they have got to have some kind of standard and stability and discipline. I don't mean discipline like, we're punishing you. I mean like a military discipline in terms of here is exactly how we do things, and we're going to stick to it.
And
it's so important.
What this principal was also doing was they were engendering in the kids this, what they call the culture of the school. They were saying, this is a smart school. You're going to be smart kids for going here. We're a successful school. And this is how we do it. So the kids would buy into the discipline. And kind of like the Marines. We're going to be great Marines. And that was how they got it done. And I as middle class white people, we have a much softer culture about our children. We dandle them on our knees and we read them picture books when they're babies and they don't know what a book is. And there's a lot of gentleness and sweetness in that system.
But there's also a discipline. That I grew up in an upper middle class family, and I went to what I would call very privileged public schools. We didn't know it because that's all we knew.
Yeah.
And I'm not from around here. You can tell by my speech pattern.
Right.
But I've lived here for nearly 30 years. I've always said that whatever goes on comes from the home. Our kids aren't getting it in the home.
Yeah.
And I love these children. I want so much for them. They're not getting it in the home. So we have to provide it in the school.
Yes.
My kids, I was with a friend last weekend, and we were out shopping, and she said, she's a teacher too. This would be a good teacher gift. This would be a good teacher. I said, you know what gift I want? I want one thing. The gift I want is for the parents to send me their children geared to know that education is everything, just like the previous caller to mine.
Yeah.
It's not about money. It's about, and I can tell you we've got the Denzel Washingtons and the Will Smiths, the people like that in this world who their mamas said, you are getting an education and you are speaking correct English. And you're going to speak correct English.
Yeah.
And those are very basic things. And they got that from the home. And they did not come from well-off families. Neither one of them. They were raised by single mothers.
But they had a culture that was successful.
Yes, and I'm going to tell you something. I have some adorable, wonderful kids in my class that are the kids of single mothers, and they dropped in on me on conference night, and they're working, and I'm sure they're getting some help from our government, and they are really good parents.
Mm-hmm.
And the bad parents, the ones whose kids are misbehaving in class, and by the way, it's not the whole class. It might be 3 or 4 kids out of a class of 20. But they make it so hard for us to teach the rest of the kids who really are listening.
You can't, I mean, in practical terms, you can't get the day's lesson down them if you've got to spend half your time dealing with a couple really disruptive kids, right?
Yes, and we all do in my school. I teach 29 classes a week, and I've got a lot, and that's why my principals have been great about training me to deal with exactly what you were talking about, this standard discipline so that kids get it, so they know here's what we think you're great, we think you're smart, we know you can do it, and here's the way it's got to be, and here's how we operate. And it's the way to go, and it's a very, very tough road to hoe.
Yeah. Look, thanks for your call. I really appreciate it. It's very, very interesting to hear from you. When we talk about tough discipline, oh man, I mean some I don't mean corporal punishment, but I mean some things that make me squeamish. A friend of mine talked to me about going through one of these schools, really successful school, where they're taking kids from very chaotic backgrounds, public housing, lots of drug addiction and dysfunction, and as this caller described, the kids are coming from bounce-around lives, and the only order in their lives is in the school. So my friend is going through this school, and they go into the library, and here's this thing, this metal cage with a toilet in it that looks like a jail cell. And he said, well, what's that? And the principal said, oh, that's the jail cell. And he said, what's that for? And the principal said, well, that's for, bad kids. If they misbehave, we put them in jail. And and the other kids come in and see him there. And my friend said, is that legal? And the principal said, we don't, probably not, but it works like a charm. The kids really don't want to get put in the jail cell. Now, I mention that as a very extreme example and not as one that I'm saying it sounds like a great idea. But I'm saying that when we're talking about discipline in these schools, we're talking about tough discipline. And it's part of the puzzle. Typically, if you've got an African-American school, this doesn't have to be true. I know somebody's going to call me up right now and call me a racist for saying, or a reverse racist or something. If you have poor African-American kids and you're trying to do this kind of tough discipline, I bet you've got an African-American principal. It's extremely unlikely that you're going to have a white lady sitting there running this kind of discipline on black kids. It doesn't mean it couldn't be done. It can be done. But probably if you're going to have a really effective, persuasive, charismatic leader in the school, the leader's going to look something like the kids, just because it gets around a bunch of other issues. But that leader is going to be tough. And it could be a white person. I'm not saying that there has to be a one-on-one racial match, but I think you probably get what I'm saying. Randy, on line 1. Randy, how are you this morning? Randy, hang on.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I was just discussing this with a person here at my house, and your conversation, and I think we decided that poverty does have a greater issue to it, and just feeding a kid when they come to eat breakfast doesn't fix that poverty issue. Yeah, it gets food in their mouth, but and the after-school programs, they don't fix the poverty issue that they go back to. Because, like my girlfriend was saying, if you're a parent and you're worrying about, and you're not on heroin, you're not on crack or whatever, and you're worried about your kid being able to eat something or whether he's going to have clean clothes to go to school, the reading thing is probably down on the last end of the list. So the deal about people being allowed, and it's not the poor people allowing themselves to be in poverty, it's the wealthy people that sit down and read books to their little kids at night, because you know why? They ain't got to worry about what's going to be on the dinner table or if the electricity is going to hopefully be turned back on again.
They get to be home at night. And the other thing is this, Randy, if I'm the teacher and I've got a nice little lunch waiting for me at noon, I don't want to sit in the room and look at a bunch of children who are hungry. I think it's very hard to say that if you've got kids coming to school hungry, you shouldn't feed them. I'm certainly not saying that.
Even in the issue that you're feeding them, it still doesn't fix the deal when they're going home, and their parents are not in that frame of mind to want to help them with their schoolwork and stuff. They're just trying to survive and get some noodles on the table. And the issue about the pipeline to cradle to prison deal, well, you know what? In my opinion, that falls back on the economically viable people again, because it was a situation where the people with money didn't want to keep pouring taxes in the responsibility of keeping people in prison, so they turned it into a commercial thing. Now we got what we got.
We got
not
what we got.
Not the poor people,
and I agree.
It's the economically viable people that's created.
Randy, I agree, and we got what we got. But the thing we have to keep coming back to is the fact that we know that we can do something about it. There are these schools that are enormously successful, even if the kid goes home at night and there's nothing but hell to pay. Even if that kid goes and sleeps on the street, we have schools that can bring that child to full literacy at the end of 3rd grade. In American schools, you from 1st through 3rd grade, you learn to read. From 4th grade on, you read to learn. If you can't read at the end of 3rd grade, all the numbers show you're toast. You're going to sit there and never get what's going on. It's going to be boring. It's going to be prison for you. There's some evidence that the smarter the kid is, the worse trouble they wind up in because they're even more bored. And yet we know that we can bring these kids to that it doesn't have to be that way. We know that these problems can be solved. It is not true that kid's home life is the kid's destiny. You can change the destiny. You can help that child turn his or her life around. And if we know that, how can we not do it? We got just a few seconds left. We're going to try Benny on line 2.
Did you know that the first thing that Obama did when he got to be president in Washington, D.C. was close down the Washington, D.C. public schools for allowing black children to get better educations?
Oh, that's crazy, Benny. Thanks. Look, here's what I might say to you.
Get off my lawn.
Normally, you know, this is where it goes, though. Whenever we get into this, anything that has to do with race, well, sadly, we've got this sicko streak through the culture. The Obama-hating kind of tri-cornered hat wearing bunch of people look like me, probably old white people, unhappy about where the country's wound up, negative, nothing to tell you except how terrible things are and how much worse they're going to get. Man, I've been around long enough to know that things get better and better, and we move closer and closer to justice, and this next piece is a kind of final leap where we take these children and we turn their lives around and we say, you're not going to be sitting on a picnic table drinking ponies and smoking weed. You're going to be downtown with a productive career and a happy life, and you're going to be a full partner in this society, and we're going to make that happen between 1st and 3rd grade for you. That's where the miracle's going to happen, and it can happen, and it must happen. Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. We'll see you again here next week. Get off my lawn.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.